President Obama signed that law that Jerry referred to, his health care law, which has come to be known as ObamaCare, on March 23rd. He did so against the wishes of the American people, a majority of the American public, who had expressed their opposition to that bill in public opinion polls for 8 months consistently, and who still oppose that measure now that it's become law. Now, prior to the signing ceremony, as an indication of the public opposition to this law, dozens of states had moved legislation to block it. Virginia had passed such a law with significant Democratic support, and before the ink was dry on the president's signature, 14 state attorneys general, including one Democrat, filed suit to overturn Obamacare. 7 more attorneys general and the National Federation of Independent Business stand ready to join the suit, and every day brings another legal challenge. But now that Obamacare is law, opponents are wondering whether we can alter it to move it in the right direction. The answer, I'm sorry to tell you, is no. So long as Obamacare remains on the books, there's quite literally nothing Congress can do to improve the cost, the quality, or the security of medical care for those it has swept into this compulsory health insurance scheme. Obamacare's individual mandate will increase the cost of health insurance, reduce choice, and reduce innovation in insurance design. Obamacare will cover an estimated 16 million U.S. residents through the Medicaid program, a program that in 2007 let a 12-year-old boy die because his mother could not find a participating dentist. Obamacare will cover another 16 million uninsured residents with ostensibly private health insurance coverage through its new health insurance exchanges, where government price controls will guarantee that insurers will avoid, mistreat, and deny care to the sick. Private markets have been innovating in ways that right under Congress's nose with new products that make health insurance more and more secure, but Obamacare's price controls will end that innovation and make access to care less secure. Obamacare's entitlement spending, more than $1 trillion in subsidies for Medicaid and private insurance, will reduce economic growth and opportunity and trap Americans in low-wage jobs. It will be piled atop the $100 trillion in unfunded liabilities already confronting taxpayers and move the United States that much closer to Greece. Now, unless we repeal Obamacare, the reforms that we advocates of free markets have traditionally advanced won't make any difference. Free market advocates, we say that we should give workers control over the money the money their employer uses to purchase their health insurance by adopting tax credits or large health savings accounts or some other tax reform, so that workers can purchase secure coverage that stays with them from job to job, that's there when they need it, when they get sick. Yet workers will never control that money as long as Obamacare stands. They'll be forced to spend it according to the dictates of Obamacare's individual mandate, and no matter how workers try to protect themselves from a bad deal, Obamacare is going to come after those earnings. I and others have advocated reforming the Medicaid program the same way Congress reformed welfare in 1996. Under Obamacare, however, those reforms would constitute either an enormous tax increase on low-income workers or an enormous unfunded liability on the states and state taxpayers. Free market advocates recommend letting consumers and employers purchase health insurance regulated by a state other than their own, so that regulators have to compete to provide the best consumer protections. Yet, with Obamacare's individual mandate in place, there can be no competition. The federal government now holds a monopoly on providing consumer protections, and as with all monopolies, this one will produce high costs and low quality. Some say that if we set up the new health insurance exchanges in the right way, we can make the market work. Yet the regulations for the exchanges will be written in Washington and will not allow for any meaningful innovation. One of the lessons of Mitt Romney's experiment with creating a new government bureaucracy that is supposed to manage or create a new competitive marketplace is this: government is the bull in the china shop of our liberties. You may hope that you can create a new government bureaucracy and make it market-friendly. But when we give government new areas to move about, we soon find that we can't confine it to those areas. Once it starts moving, it builds up momentum, and it ends up in places you never wanted it to be. There is no substitute for repealing Obamacare. There is no reform without repeal. So how should reformers go about it? Well, first, when people tell us that repealing Obamacare is impossible, we should remind them that to say repeal is impossible is essentially to claim that we no longer live in a democracy. Things aren't that bad yet. When they say that repeal is improbable, we should remind them that Congress has repealed much more popular pieces of healthcare legislation, like the Medicare Catastrophic Act of 1988. That was repealed 1 year later in 1989. And we should spend the next 4 years educating the public about how Obamacare will leave America sicker and poorer. Members of Congress can hold hearings on Obamacare and how it affects jobs, health care costs, the quality of care, and innovation. They should hold votes on repealing Obamacare. When those first votes fail, they should hold more hearings, and it won't be hard to do. After the signing ceremony, members of Congress were surprised to learn that this new law actually throws members of Congress out of their existing health insurance plans. There have been and will be more surprises. Obamacare is the gift that keeps on giving. So there will be ample opportunity for these sorts of hearings and these sorts of teachable moments that further educate the public about how Obamacare is going to leave them worse off. Even as they work toward repeal, members can delay implementation of the worst parts of Obamacare until 2015 or 2016. They can threaten to shut down the federal government unless President Obama signs the original Stupak Amendment, barring federal funding of elective abortions, a position that the vast majority of Americans support. States, for their part, should join the existing lawsuits to overturn Obamacare as unconstitutional. They should follow the lead of Arizona, Missouri, Virginia, and other states that are enacting legislation or holding referenda to block the federal government from forcing their residents to purchase health insurance. Now, to be clear, those laws, like the measure that's going to be on the ballot in Missouri on August 3rd, have zero chance of blocking Obamacare's individual mandate. But the citizens of the several states have every right to pass as many laws as they want, protesting the federal government's encroachment of their liberties, and they should continue to do so because that creates more teachable moments. And every one of those efforts reminds the political class that the American people do not want Obamacare. They do not want government to have the power to force them to purchase health insurance, and they want Congress to start obeying the Constitution. And each of these strategies is mutually reinforcing. Every lawsuit that advances through the courts will keep voters focused on what they like least about Obamacare. Each targeted piece of legislation, like the Stupak Amendment, that shows how Obamacare is fundamentally at odds with the nation's values, builds the case for repeal, and everything that opponents do in the political realm to educate the public about Obamacare will harden public opposition and give the courts a freer hand to overturn it. The prospects for health care reform at this point look pretty grim. But as the Zen master said, we'll see. If Congress repeals Obamacare, we will have an opportunity to implement real health care reform, and we will never again have to confront a law like Obamacare. If the Supreme Court overturns it, we will have the added benefit of the court enforcing an important limit on Congress's power to intervene in the economy, and either way, America would be better off than had Obamacare never passed.